Reboot it!
Welcome to another Reboot Rewind. I'm Ron Swallow.
I'm Ed Greer.
I'm producer Bill, and check out my shirt.
Oh, yeah. Available at our TeePublic store. That's right. tpublic.com/user/reboot-it. That's how you can get those sweet, sweet t-shirts.
Also, link in the description below, so check that out.
Boom. Oh, yeah, and you know what? While we're here, press subscribe and that alarm bell and the like button. Do it right now. Why not? You know what this is, guys. If you're a fan, if you're not a fan, what we're about to do is make you a fan by talking about one of the older episodes that we've done and saying how it came about, how we thought of it, did it age well, all of that good stuff. Do we still like it? And addressing some of your guys' comments. So let's get into it. How did we decide to do Universal Monsters, guys?
I think, does that one come with Billy, or is it you, Bill?
No, that was all me. None of you guys wanted to do this. This was one that I had to like cajole for, because you guys, I think just a combination of, I mean, you tell me, but my take was just a combination of these properties being so old, so played out, so kind of their time, and already having gone through so many different versions of like failed modern day reboots. And to me, those were all good reasons to tackle it. I just felt like the same way that we did when we went down the rabbit hole of doing like our whole version of the DCEU, when something already has like an arguable failed reboot behind it, I'm all the more eager to jump in and try and do it again, because it's just a nice challenge.
Yeah, I was, this is one of those times where I actually think the challenge was daunting to me, because it just seems so big to pull together all these different characters and jam them in and make them all relevant at the same time, which I think we pulled off pretty well. But that's why I was reticent when you were first suggesting. I was like, oh, the Universal Monsters. I also, honestly, kind of don't care about the Universal Monsters very much. I mean, I read Frankenstein, but other than that, never been much of a big fan of that stuff. So
I don't either, by the way.
Yeah, no,
not to cut you off, Ed, but yeah, just to get that out there.
But no. But I think what I was going to say is, I think Bill sees this as, yeah, it kind of sucks, so this is an opportunity to dump our genius on it. And I felt like this kind of, I felt a lot of anxiety over doing the episode, because I felt like the best way to do them would be some kind of combo film, but that we were going to talk about how we were going to do a combo film ad nauseum and ruin the episode. And at around minute 50 of this episode is when we congeal into a reasonably intelligent team force concept of this, but not, because we talked about what it wasn't for like quite a long time. And I don't know, part of me knew that was going to happen, but to Bill's credit, it was necessary for us to kind of embrace. This is like our third or fourth most popular episode, I think, as far as pure numbers.
Yeah, we've got a ton of views on this one. I also think it's interesting that, as daunting as it is to us, this is one of the realer sort of scenarios that we've played with in the course of Rebooted, because the dark universe has been a thing that Universal has been trying to do for literally decades now, and they never seem to get it right. So I guess that is maybe a notch in the con column of tackling it. But for me, that, again, was just another reason to say, well, look, we got to do, it's one thing to say, here's a hypothetical Knight Rider reboot that nobody's asking for. It's quite another thing to say, oh, no, here's something that a major studio has literally sunk hundreds of millions of dollars into trying to make happen. How would we do it? I like that challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's kind of why we did this in the first place, was like we wanted to prove that we can tell good stories and do things that are hard. Like that's a huge portion of why we're doing it. So now, Ed, do you feel like and Bill, do you feel like we did a good job still? Like if you're looking back on it, did you watch any of it? What do you think?
Well, just really quickly, the only thing I would say is I just watched it recently, and I really do think that this is our best episode in regards to what we actually should be doing, which is kind of pitching a framework for how a thing can be developed into a series of movies or whatever. We're trying to rehab franchises, correct? So a lot of times what we'll do is jump on here and give your ass a whole movie in an hour and be like, yeah, boy, look at this, beginning, middle, end. We got arcs, we got this, we got that. Yeah. But I think this is, and I love that. And I know the fans love the completion of that. But in reality, with something this unwieldy, trying to do that, what I just said, would have made this thing 2 hours or 25 minutes long. So what we instead did was develop these characters into things that can clash against each other, like the action figures that Marvel characters and other things are, but with a grown-up gravitas that could never be confused for us, making them a mere superhero universe. I think Bill was hot on the trail of that throughout the entire episode, not making this the new League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, blah, blah. And I wasn't even pitching that, but I could see that was coming off that way. But all I was trying to say is the last time I saw this good was like Monster Squad or something. They were all up in there, and they figured out a dumb way for them to be in there instead of just dwelling on doing another failed solo one for each of these guys so that we could, repeat.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, you did say rehab, and I just now picture this movie smoking in a backyard, that they now stayed in a house. They're not drinking anymore. They're pretty sad about the whole thing, but they're also looking forward to the future. So,
kind of the vibe of the movie, really, if you go back and look at the pitch. That's what I just wanted to co-sign what Ed was saying. I don't know that this is the best episode for any person to go back and watch, because there is a lot of meandering. This might be our longest episode, maybe next to some of our live finales. That said, the work that we did in terms of character development and laying those pieces out on the chessboard and sort of threading an interesting mix of like character types, character backstories, mythology, conflicts, and where it might all go, I totally agree. I think this is some of our strongest work. I think it just takes a little bit more tenacity to get through this episode so you could actually absorb all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we may get to it a little bit in the comments, but there was a lot of people who were like, I'm at minute 32, and I just got to say something. I'm at minute 45, and I just got to say something.
Yep, I'm at minute 50, and I just got I think at minute 50, 18, we're doing something. We're really getting to it. But at minute 50, somebody sent in the comment, now hold on. So I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get to the synopsis. Let's do the thing. We're not going to do a video this time because we realized we didn't do one for this thing. Damn it, Bill.
Because of the reasons we just said, I think even Bill's still trapped mind knew that it couldn't force those Legos all into something. So the task falls down to me, which is like, hey, if the Hulk can't lift it, get Thor. That's reverse. That doesn't make any sense. So let's just see how we can do this, because I watched the episode and I wrote this synopsis, and I'll read it because it's definitely in my voice. It's definitely in my voice. Okay. Awesome. Here's the Universal Monster synopsis by me.
Let me tell you something mean, Gene. That's how it starts.
Yep. An FBI agent played by Danai Gurira stumbles onto a series of true detective-esque crimes. Beautiful women are being ripped apart and put back together all wrong. She tracks the killer down and finds out it's a damn monster. The FBI don't like hearing that the killer is an unkillable monster, so she gets fired and they call her crazy. So she starts going to group therapy with a group of survivors of unexplainable events. She thinks she's in a group of crazies. One man, played by Liam Hemsworth, says an aquatic creature took his girlfriend beneath the sea. Another lady says that a wolf stalks her across the world and kills whoever she gets close to. Two older women in the group, Vanessa Redgrave playing Frankenstein's wife, and the other lady in her 50s, played by Bonnie Hunt, who encountered Frankenstein as a child. They're like these two ladies who seem to have, run into some sort of damn monster. They start to piece together a shared lineage of these monsters. Frankenstein could have created the Black Lagoon monster and deemed it a failed experiment and dumped it in a lagoon somewhere. The Wolfman could conceivably be one of these failed experiments. But in this first movie, The series focuses on the monsters as metaphors for misogyny, as Frankenstein is trying to turn his wife into a young, beautiful creature rather than accepting her age. The Wolfman wants to track down and hunt and possess a woman. And even the guy who's mourning his wife, who was taken by the creature from the Black Lagoon, is partially angry at himself for not defending his woman. At the end of the movie, we'd have the surviving members of the support group and the FBI agent trying to get to the bottom of all this and subsequent adventures. And in these subsequent adventures, we might get to, we lay down hints that the creature who inspired Frankenstein's research was early 20th century proto-Nazi experiment, Dracula. As the movie series progressed, we'd eventually maybe be able to uncover that the mummy was the real source for all these monsters, because ancient Egyptian science designed to defeat death is the true godfather of all these arcane creatures. But for the first movie, it's about the ladies doing it for themselves, and that's the end.
Nice, Ed. That was a hell of a synopsis, and with an admirable display of restraint for such an unwieldy episode.
Exactly. I did not invent anything. I looked in there. I did not add anything to the story to try to make it make sense in the post tense. No editorializing, really. But that's what it is. So I think Billy, honestly, I don't like to keep score on these things, but it's where my memory goes. And Billy said, what if it's a support group? I do believe. I think Billy came with that angle of it. And that's a masterstroke, man. That really helped us to structure it in a way to where, we can have these disparate stories interact in a human way. We're not just seeing a monster spectacle. We're having people talk and commiserate over monster spectacle. And we play it as though, as another thing Billy and Bill were saying, maybe it's not real. For half the movie, we don't know if it's really real. It's not taken for a given.
That's where the whole thing sort of clicked for me, is this idea that, this is a movie about survivors, right? This is a movie that, unlike all the original black and white Universal monster movies, it firmly and completely takes place from the point of view of the victims. And so it's a subtle shift of the whole franchise, which really used to be about telling the story from the monster's point of view, where it almost was like asking you to sympathize with the monster. Like, they may be horrible, they may be fiends, they may be murderers, but it was, the cruelty and coldness of society that made them that way. Well, okay, fine. But we've gotten those stories. So what's the fresh take? And I think refocusing it with, to be fair, some deference to this new version of The Invisible Man starring Elizabeth Moss, we just sort of rebuilt all the idea of these monsters from the point of view of the victims. Like, what would it be like to be hunted? Why would you be hunted? What would you be going through? And what would be the thing you need, which would be sort of anybody who could believe that this happened. And it creates interesting character dynamics. I loved all that.
Yeah, I mean, when we started talking about it, I remember picturing, and as Ed did the reread, the synopsis, I could picture this group of people. Like, this just traumatized, telling each other's stories and believing each other and being supportive, and feel like and really feel like anybody who's never been believed when they've been told, when they tell the truth about themselves. Like, I could really get that. So I thought that was a really cool idea. My favorite part of the episode, though, is when when Bill was like, oh, maybe the mummy will be the only magic thing. And Ed was like, no, I hate magic. I hate it so much. And then he suggested science. And that was my favorite part. He didn't really do it that well, but that's what he was thinking in his head. He didn't yell like that. That was what he was thinking that in his head. And he was like, no, instead, science Egyptians. That's not magic at all. And I'm down with it. But I really did think it was a great idea. And I thought, and the thing I liked about that is then it linked all of the characters together, or it made it possible, I should say, to link all the characters together. So that was pretty great.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, frankly.
There was an interesting through line that we ended up sort of stumbling on, and I think it was late in the episode, but just that idea that, in the same way that the super soldier serum is kind of the backbone that links all these elements of the Marvel universe. We sort of found a backbone in our universe that was, man's desire to cheat death.
Mm-hmm.
And starting with sort of bold and grotesque techniques in the time of the ancient Egyptians or Mesoamericans, which gives us the mummy, graduating into, unethical Nazi science experiments gives us Dracula. That research taken up, in the 50s or 60s gives us Frankenstein's monster. And just creating this timeline that, like, really what we're talking about here is sort of this almost tyrannical approach to a fear of death. Like, rather than acquiesce to the reality of death, I will become a monster so that I can escape it. And while that sounds good if you're the person who's going to be cured of death, looking at that from the point of view of people who are essentially collateral damage in that quest gives a whole other sort of uneasy feeling to it. So I love that as well. I think we found that backbone, despite the fact that this was a very character-driven discussion.
Also, one just real quick run before you get to some comments maybe or whatever. I really think what was interesting about you said it was one of our longer episodes, Bill. It's like an hour and 39 minutes long. Mm-hmm. Like it's like it seems like it's got so much stuff in it, like the 2-hour live ones, but it's actually just a little bit fatter than a regular episode. But it has so much stuff in it, though. It's funny that you remembered it being kind of longer than it actually is.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think it all goes back to, we're reiterating at this point, but it does go back to the fact that, like, so much of the early conversation was just about, like, well, we've got 50 movies that have already been made and all these different versions, and what are we going to do? Like, that took so long.
Yeah, it did.
Well, I would like to stop this reiterating, and we'll get to the iterating from our comments from our great fans. Starting with Barton Donnelly. Okay, let's do this. Barton said, can these characters really fit into the modern era, i.e. 2000 to 2020, or should they remain in the 1800s to 1940s? Darth Districtor answered, I'd say do what Francis Ford Coppola did with his Dracula movie, but use the 1400s, 1800s, then present time. And for all the monster films, then you could do the whole myth or fables about them with groups for them and against them. And I'd make Van Helsing and his offspring the protagonist of the films.
Darth Destructor just pitching a whole other movie. All good. Yeah. We love that.
Yeah.
Ron, there is another couple of Van Helsing comments. Can you just put those on the screen? Because I think we could just talk about this all in one big go.
Let me see if I can find which ones they are.
There's probably here we go. Yeah.
Only about 23 minutes into watching this, but man, you all are on the path to make the 2004 Van Helsing movie. LOL. That is an LOL, and I will not have it.
And I think the next one mentions Van Helsing as well. But the point is, a lot of people were hung up on this Van Helsing jazz for some reason, and I don't want to pull a Bill, so I'm just gonna calm down and pull a reasonable Ed. I don't like this Van Helsing jazz. I don't like deciding that there's one group of people fighting vampires over all time. Vampires in our thing are more recent, so we're not bogged down by all that old crap, honestly. And our conception of vampires is different than the suave, gentlemanly lord with dirt in his pillow in the base of a ship going hither and thither. That's not our damn Dracula. Our Dracula is a weird cannibal Nazi. Deal with it or don't. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah. I let me just say too, I think there's just, I can't explain it. So I'm putting this out there for you to comment in the comments. Feel free. Why do people just have this knee-jerk thing to be like, well, if you're going to do Dracula, where's Mina Harker and where's Van Helsing and where's Jonathan Harker? And it's like, haven't we seen that story so many times? Like, just because you're telling a Dracula story doesn't mean you need a Professor Van Helsing there as, like, the Moriarty to Dracula's Sherlock Holmes or vice versa. I think part of what we were doing in this pitch, and frankly, we probably weren't doing it at minute 23 or whatever that guy was talking about.
Yeah.
But part of the thing that we did in this pitch is just recontextualize everything. And so part of that is, like, trim the fat.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would argue that we did actually trim the fat, especially it's so funny because when Ed laid out what the synopsis is, it's pretty trim. It's not super big. So let's get into another comment from Shradell Lambert. Hopefully I'm saying that right. If I butcher your name, I apologize. This would be an amazing Netflix series. I would watch that shiz all day. And then this guy said, exacta mente. And look, sometimes we just got to put a comment up there that's like telling us how cool we are.
Well, I mean, no, I put that one in there. I selected that rather because it foreshadows what we did in season 4, going into longer form storytelling and understanding that some of these things are super unwieldy. Had we come upon this idea during the streaming season, I think this episode is even leaner, but it maybe doesn't have this much energy because we were trying to consolidate all of these properties into one movie. And the act of trying to do that, we ended up making like 3 movies, but the act of trying to make it into one made it 3 rather than 57 or a giant Netflix series. You know what I mean? So I mentioned that for that reason.
I could totally see this like a True Detective style series in my head. I don't know why I could see it that way, but I think actually Bill brought it up in the episode that maybe it's True Detective style. I think that's actually why.
Yeah, I think Billy brought that up.
Yeah. So I could definitely see this as a series as well. I prefer it be on HBO.
I mean, HBO does have a much better track record with their limited series than Netflix does, but whoever wants to take it, whoever.
Yeah, totally. So let's get to another comment. We got Apostrophe Music. Apostrophe Music said, I think you can make a good crossover movie. A team up could work if they all die in their respective movies. Dracula revives them and tells them all they need to work for him, and they'll get their humanity back. Eventually, they could realize what they've done and fight Dracula and kill him at the expense of their own lives because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. It would complete all of their journeys in one movie. Come on. There we go. Well, that's perfect.
Well, I could just say that Bill is saying, once again, you're pitching your own movie, and that's fine. That's dope. You made up a movie. Good job. But I don't think Bill would say that last part because I don't. It's like one of these things where, honestly, for me, the only thing I find distasteful about the idea is this conception that it's almost as vulgar as all the monsters fighting on a super team.
Yeah.
This concept that they're all gonna have this moral. They're all gonna become a Suicide Squad of their own accord and have this moral. No, people don't do that. Why would monsters do that? That doesn't make any sense. That to me.
And also, I mean, you're really getting into mumbo gumbo territory when it's like, okay, they all have their own different backstories, but then they're all going to die and Dracula's all going to revive them. So now you've got, risen from the dead on top of whatever their individual thing is, and Dracula's mind controlling all of them. So you got that in there as well. Like, this is what we talk about when we say mumbo gumbo, is literally that post. And, no hate to the poster, but like, that's the thing that just doesn't sell in a movie. It really doesn't. And you look at the Avengers and you're like, well, that's the way to do it. They all get their own individual movies and like they get their own individual mythology, and then you bring them together for some reason. And it's like, yeah, that worked once. I just don't know that that's a transferable thing. Like,
but
I'm gonna watch.
Again,
yeah.
No, but again, and not to blow myself or ourselves for coming up with that through line of the fact that it's all about trying to cheat death. It's been technology that's been here and been mutating over different means throughout history. That focuses it and keeps it from mumbo gumbo territory. Mm-hmm. That's what keeps it from being a mummy, another type of magic being, Dracula, another type of weird magical realism creature, Frankenstein. And Wolfman is stop. Yeah. It can all come from the same branch and be feasible and have these disparate takes on horror.
Yeah, and at the same time, but Bill also mentioned early on in the episode that they needed to be monsters. Like they needed to be monsters and forces, not their own characters. Mm-hmm. That's very important, and I think Bill was 100% right. And I'm very glad we did not try to do that, which would have been my idea.
Well, I think that just comes from that is the state of modern horror, right? Like you just don't see horror movies anymore that are trying to ask you to like follow a character arc with the killer. We don't tell those stories. Not to say that somebody brilliant couldn't come along and figure out a way to do it, but I think especially in this context where you're not trying to tell a story, you're trying to tell a bunch of different stories about a bunch of different characters with mythology, even in our streamlined version, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with each other. Like all of that is a real argument against, like, let's find a character arc for every one of these monsters. It becomes too much. You can't make an actual movie that way. It's just bloated.
Yeah, 100%. And let's get to Charlotte Fierro. Simple solution to Peter's demands. Dr. Frankenstein isn't trying to resurrect her husband. She's trying to resurrect her wife. So Frankenstein's monster is also literally the bride of Frankenstein. And then chimed in, that's right, with the simplest solution is often the best. Well done.
Yeah, and that's in reference to the Peter suggestion was that we had to have a big, giant, buxom, beautiful bride of Frankenstein in this movie. Period. You
wanted sex appeal on the bride.
Yes,
exactly. So it's nice. This is one of my favorite type of comments is when someone comes up with a cool idea and we can all be like, yeah, thumbs up, smart person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that would streamline a couple things in ours. But the one thing I'm not trying to argue against that, because I would do that change in a minute. Some executive comes along and says do that instead, just streamline it. I'm all for it. The reason why we did what we did was not we certainly didn't think of that, number one, but number two, we were trying to stick with the misogyny theme of like the killer guy is putting together women all wrong as sort of sketches to show to his wife, to see like, you could be with me. We could be magnificent, giant, messed up creatures and live forever. And he's like rejecting her aging. He's rejecting her natural cycle of life. He's rejecting all of that because he's made himself into this freako monster. Or rather in the story, it's kind of nebulous now, but like, it seems as though he dies and she recreates him and he comes back all messed up. And so that's kind of her original sin, is making Frankenstein's monster, which in Frankenstein, at that point, Frankenstein, the doctor, and the monster are the same person with the same set of skills. So we have a monster with intense scientific skill and acumen out there trying to do weird experiments to create a new wife, to create weird super soldier buddies, to just do whatever he wants to do. The detritus of him trying to create in this maddened state with this immortal lifespan and this superpower creates this universe and on a lot of levels.
And I really love the dynamic too of, there's a sense of sort of guilt and responsibility to the bride of like the human bride of Frankenstein, who's one of our main characters, the older woman, because she knows why he's doing all this. She does have the original sin of she's the one who brought him back. And then every time another girl is taken and mutilated by this horrible creature, she knows that the only reason he's doing it is to sort of prove in some twisted way that he could do it to her too. It's all sort of like this weird twisted love letter to her, which again fits the misogyny theme to a T, but also just creates such like a weird, creepy motivation to that Mrs. Frankenstein character. It's really good stuff on a character level.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got Socks 5280, great name. 40 minutes in, another one of those. And I'm thinking they should be recruiting Dr. Frankenstein as the monster and not his actual monster, almost like an evil Tony Stark who has made hundreds of monsters in attempt to master the art of Frankensteining dead bodies. The most recent monster is a Joe Fixit style bodyguard. I don't know. I've been smoking the devil's lettuce too.
I picked that one because obviously I love me some devil's lettuce, but also it's interesting that how close we come to that a little bit later in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
totally.
Minute 27, someone had a cool thought. Nice work, Socks 5280. We did kind of come to that. I assume that's your real name. Your parents, I don't know why they put numbers in your name, but All right, guys. Sometimes I make bad jokes, and you're going to deal with it.
God, can't do anything about it. We're trapped.
You really can't. I think right now, since since I'm being goofy, we're going to go into this this weird negative comment. You know what? Before I do that, I think we're going to have to switch a little bit. Hold on. Okay, here we go. That dude in the bottom left corner is annoying. I literally can't finish this video because I can't listen to that guy say another single word.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that was Ed.
Yeah, dude. And
That was weird because I thought it was me. It wasn't.
It actually switched in the episode. You were in the left corner, but then Billy saw that it was wrong, so he switched it. I just I heard this comment and it really hurt me. It hurt my feelings because like it I don't know. It was true in that episode on some level. I went back and watched it. I feel like I was so insistent and hyper in that episode because I did not want us to do the same old thing. I didn't want us to take one episode to try to pitch 5 movies of these individual dudes. I felt like that was going to be a big waste of time. And I felt like I had to be hyper vigilant against that. I was a little interrupty, even more so than usual. I feel like I had this manic energy about me. And I could see how, without being soaked in the blood of Ed Greer over the course of like 5 years on Screen Junkies or something, or 4 years of our own shows from Nerd Go to the Greatest Pod and things like that, or not seeing me on TV on Comedy Central doing the same weird spastic act up there as well. You know what I mean? Not knowing me coming in cold, yuck. Coming in cold, I'd be like, oh, this dude is horrible. He's like making these ridiculous metaphors that go nowhere. This is just a bunch of wheat, not much chaff. I don't like this guy, especially for the first 40 minutes.
I love that you were just complaining about metaphors and then used wheat and chaff. This is perfect. That's perfect.
I'm just saying, in the end aggregate, obviously, this person is a mama's basement loser, Mountain Dew drinking loser guy. Obviously,
there it is, baby.
No.
I'm just gonna say probably racist.
But you know what? I don't think that, because he went out of his way to say the guy in the left corner. He could have described my backdrop and what hat I was wearing. You know what I'm saying? He was very studious not to bring that up. So I'm not going to put that on him, especially since he didn't put it in the initial text. However, look, man, there people who are famous, and I am not famous, but anybody that's on their way to being famous or famous, they're annoying. Their whole stee is weird. Mm-hmm. And they just get it over. More and more people like it. They start getting used to it, and they can't see how weird it is that they talk that way. There's people who like how Quentin Tarantino communicates at this point because he's such a genius. Can you imagine sitting next to Quentin Tarantino for an hour? You die.
Exhausted.
You die.
Exhausted.
So that's kind of, I know I bring a little energy like that, but just like him, just like a lot of other manic weirdos, I don't know, man. We're the strivers. We're the weird people. We're the ones who get it done. So I'm sorry that I offended you with how odd I am and how insistent I was. And I think it is a nice thing for me to look back and see how I can, be just a little bit more calm on the air, be a little bit more not so preemptively trying to defend my ideas. There were certain episodes in season 3 where I was doing that a lot. So I appreciate this comment for what it was. Super wrong, but right a little bit. And
sometimes that's all you can ask for. That's all you're going to get.
Absolutely.
On a more macro level, I will say that I think a lot of the times when we do struggle early in an episode, like we did on this one, right, where we spend a lot of time chasing our tails, I think sometimes that's inevitable. I think we've had discussions before about every time we try to tackle a property that has an ensemble cast, we kind of end up doing that because it's a little bit of that negotiation of like, how much time are we giving to each person? Who's the real main character? Who's not? This and that. But I think the other thing that sometimes gets us in a tail chasing mode is when one of us comes in with those anxieties that Ed was talking about. Mm-hmm. I've certainly done it on episodes. Billy has certainly done it on episodes. Ron, there may have even been 1 or 2 episodes that you've done it where if you come in feeling defensive about the pitch before we start pitching, you're gonna have a bad time. And like we get over it, but that idea of like, all right, I'm gonna come in and I've got a lot of strong ideas about what this shouldn't be, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a good lesson to learn. Sometimes that's necessary, but we have learned to trust each other. And I think we're doing it less and less because part of that is coming from an insecurity in the people that you're collaborating with. Part of that is coming from an insecurity of like, oh my God, these MFers are just going to force me to do this and I don't want to do it. So I'm going to get out there and stop it before it happens. And it's again, we've all done it. I know I've done it. It is counterproductive to the process when you do that. So something to take away.
And the funny thing is, if you relent and you just express your ideas as best you can and you calm down, like towards the end, I was really like, I was so manic at the beginning that I remember when I was pitching the thing about like the mummy being scientific, like Bill goes, I'm out in the middle of it because I had been so combative the whole time and so blah, blah, blah. But when I really started breaking it down, everybody got what I was saying, how it unified the theme or whatever. But I really had to calm the hell down and express that in a logical, this is logical. This isn't my emotional response to how sucky magic is. It's this movie doesn't necessarily need magic. It needs a feeling of mysticism and an unknowable Arthur C. Clarke version of magic.
Well, I can't wait till we do Harry Potter because I don't know how you are going to remove magic from Harry Potter, but I can't wait to see what you're going to do. I'm very excited.
We'll do it.
For you to remove wizards from the wizard school. It's going to be great.
They're all going to be playing pinball.
It's all drug-induced hallucination. It's hardcore like a Aronofsky movie. It's going to be great.
Yeah, they're just in a high school and on drugs. That sounds great.
Boom. Love it.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to I'm not going to say this person's name right, but I'm going to try to say it right. It's Nahuel Giola. You can let me know if I said that. I have to zoom in on this so I can see it all. It's a pretty big one, guys, but it's a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do it, Ed?
I can do it. I think I can summarize it.
You read it.
So first time I've ever watched the show, very entertained by the banter, but completely disagree with the conclusion reached. I feel like it's a bad idea in the first place to try to make it a horror remake. My instincts tell me that the only way to be able to do a cinematic universe with the Universal monsters is to try to emulate the idea of the legendary monsterverse, but maybe with a bit more of a dark comedy vibe. 5 movies centered around
let's respond to that. We'll come back to it. So let's respond to that first.
You can do the second part, Ron. The big fat part.
Yeah, I thought this was the other ones that were additive. This was one that's not as additive. So
no, I think it's good because it is just like that guy who was dissing me. It's a first time watcher of the show. We get to see what they think. So I love this comment. So go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think if you look at what we actually ended up with, it's similar. It's more similar to the Monsterverse than you're maybe giving it credit for. It definitely doesn't treat the monsters as the protagonists in the same way that a lot of those Monsterverse movies do. But that idea that, you're sort of connected, the connective tissue being this sort of mysterious, unearthed history where they all sort of share a same lineage that ties into some big conspiracy theory. We did that. And the idea that like, your human characters end up becoming investigators and people with their own agendas who are essentially just like living in the wake of the carnage of these monsters. It's a little bit different, but we did that too. I think the biggest difference is we weren't making action movies with the monsters as the protagonists. And frankly, I don't know how you would do that. I mean, they tried to do it kind of with The Mummy, the Tom Cruise version of The Mummy, and it just didn't work. I just don't think like the scale and the spectacle is there with these characters. And I think when you try to infuse it, it feels hokey. It doesn't have any sort of gravitas, which frankly, as stupid as it sounds, I think you get an inherent gravitas with a monster that's 400 feet tall that could kick over a city block because there's real, like the human toll is wrapped up in the spectacle. Like, what are we gonna? Are we gonna have Dracula going at super speed and just mowing down people in gallons of blood? Like, that would be the equivalent, which feels like a weird choice. Just does.
And the only other thing I objected to is the dark comedy vibe. I feel like there's definitely going to be gallows humor as these ladies, and I guess a guy figure out that their world is haunted by cryptozoic monsters. You know what I mean? As they figure that out, it's going to get funny at some point. It's going to be like, this is horrific. This is awful. There's going to be some humor in there, but as a humor product, like with multiple jokes paced and written with jokes in mind on some level.
Yeah, comedic intent, not a good idea for this.
Think so at all. Like, that's what I kind of uffed at. The other part, yeah, as you said, Bill, we kind of did that.
Should I read the rest of it?
Yeah, if it's worth it.
5 movies centered about one of the monsters, with all of them having a human cast that basically stumbles into the monster and gets killed off. Do your best to have each monster look as intimidating and powerful in each film as possible, and then have a 6th film with a Van Helsing type who hunts them all of them, sort of mercenary work. None of the monsters should look too soundly beaten because the hunter ends up getting betrayed by their contractors. And okay, this is a lot.
I'll read the rest. Check this out. And put into a cage, just like all the monsters they incapacitated. The 7th film is a full-on battle royale against all brawl, which is presented in universe as a PPP attraction by a desperate promoter. The promoter, being an idiot, hands the final man standing a prize and gets killed to end the saga. If the movies have been making too much money to end at 7 films, post-credits scene where it's shown that the corpses are still twitching, hinting at some type of necromancer who could be the main villain for a part 2 of the universe. Oh man, it's a lot harder to get people scared of Dracula than get them hyped to see Dracula kill some fuckers. Go full spectacle versus movie hype. Hell, maybe even have Frankenstein versus werewolf before the first 2 of all the monsters. Anyway, the whole point of that comment, honestly, I love how it was like started out kind of reasoned and we kind of did some stuff, and then it descends into this I picture my own movie hell, and I'm just like, this person, write that, get nuts. That's an idea. I don't like it, and it's not my opinion. Doesn't mean anything. Nor does any of ours. I'm telling you, I don't like that, and I would like you to write that, because it's obvious you see that in your head. You see everything that would be involved, like a promoter and monsters. Now you could use these monsters. You could use other monsters. Get nuts. Make up your own monsters. Make up your own monster book verse with these monsters, and a wrestling monster crossover book. You could print money, you little freak. That's awesome.
I actually totally agree with that. I mean, I think
I do too.
There's a lot to hate in there, right? Like, first, the idea that if these movies are just making too much money to end at 7, here's your back door to do 8. It's like, okay. Shove that right up your ass. But otherwise, there's some, I mean, you see a tone, right? And I think Ed's nailing it. It's like somewhere in the ostentatious black comedy, murder everybody, there is a wrestling tone that, yeah, maybe it could work. It's crazy enough that it could prove us wrong.
I mean, it might be one of those things like Underworld is. Underworld has like 9 movies or something at this point. They keep making them. They're not like super successful, but they keep making enough money for the guy who makes them to keep making them. Mm-hmm. So
it's an IP, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's check out Free Mechanism. This is another big one, but this one I believe is one of the additive ones.
I think I could do this one justice very quickly. This person I do believe follows me on Instagram as well, and I think that they're an amazing artist. I'm not 100%, but I think this person is an amazing artist. So, and look, judging from this comment, they're obviously very thoughtful. They're basically saying they love the reboot concept, but one nitpick: the Liam Hemsworth Navy SEAL character. As you know, in the pitch, we had him kind of mad that his lady got taken by the monster. And he says basically changing this person into Sam Rockwell, who is not necessarily a Navy SEAL, but just sort of a hard man who's like got a hard scrabble life and stuff. And his like daughter that he was just connecting back to, like he was estranged from his daughter and he just connects back to her. And then she's taken and then he's on the run because people think they killed her and all this jazz. He was very much pitching that we don't use Liam Hemsworth because Liam Hemsworth sucks, but give a good actor like Sam Rockwell the role, make it more of a paternal thing than a boyfriend-girlfriend thing, and that would be really dope. I read that comment several times, and that's what it says.
Yeah,
I mean,
even mentioned Logan Marshall Green.
Wait, you could have just read the comment at that point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but like, it got into a little bit of like all this. Sam Rockwell just bugs me, but like I get what they're saying.
Absolutely, I think it's fun. Sure.
I mean, what I loved about that comment is that the writer of that comment really connected to the thematic work we did on this pitch, and I feel like I love when people pay attention to that because it really is the most important thing to a good movie. And when done well, you don't really realize it. It's not like the movie's pounding you in the face with its theme, but a movie that's thematically consistent and uses all of its characters to explore very specific nuances of whatever theme it's presenting is just the best kind of movie. And so leaving such a thoughtful comment where you're really connecting with the idea of like, what are all these different varieties of toxic masculinity and what sort of fallout would we see from it? Getting into that sort of crappy father role, for lack of a better way to put it, was a great addition to everything that we had done. So kudos to you.
Absolutely. Here's a couple more that were also kind of like that. This one's another long one, but it's pretty great. Sam Anderson.
I'm going to read this one because we were just going back and forth at this point.
Yeah, go for
it. Sam Anderson says, "Man, this was a journey to get there, but damn do I love the conclusion of this. The focus on the survivors was a perfect take, and I used take deliberately because that's how you have to deal with these monsters. You need to bring a take to them," he says, having spent much of quarantine writing takes on these monsters. Thanks, #comic school. No idea what that refers to. My only real quibble with it is the idea of having these creatures canonized within the world as myth or conspiracy, and the implication being that the works from which the monsters are from, such as Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, etc., exist. To then make Dracula a Nazi experiment and Frankenstein an AI sort of doesn't add up. If you remove those books, it reduces the reality. However, if they're the inspiration for the experiments, okay. Small quibble, but given the intended tone, I feel it's an important detail. Oh, and casting for the woman being stalked and the Wolfman. Deborah Ann Woll, Karen Page from Netflix's Daredevil, and Ben Foster, who's always great. I feel would do exceptional work with these roles. Also, just to throw it out as a secondary pick, Karen Kusama would direct the shit out of this, even though Lynn Ramsey is incredible. To which we said, Deborah Ann Woll and Ben Foster are great casting choices. We'd watch it. So that comment actually refers to something I think we ultimately dropped, but I think Billy at one point was pitching the idea that, like, you know, if all the historical novels exist, not necessarily like the old black and white movies, but the original source material exists in this world, then it almost makes all of the characters' stories of encounters with the supernatural more unbelievable and adds to sort of the reality that they're just being like, you're crazy, like you're just taking something you read in a book and telling me that it happened to you. But I think for the same reasons that Sam Anderson points out, I think we sort of dropped that thread, unless I'm remembering incorrectly.
The AI thread?
Well, we definitely dropped that as well. But the thread of like having the original source material extant in the fictional world.
Yeah,
absolutely. And let's get to, we got two more here. We got Chris Carentit. He says around the 25-minute mark, another 25-minute, 32, 70, 74.
we were doing something wrong between like minute 23 and 30. There was something going on there.
Seriously. Around the 25-minute mark, when Bill talks about a secret society covering up Victorian mysteries, gave me the idea to have all the monsters be imprisoned by these people. They never found a way to kill them, only contain them. Then you have the team up be about the monsters trying to get away from this society, because individually the humans can lock them up, but together they are too powerful to overcome. Make it like a fugitive story where the secret society are the cops and the monsters on the run are all varying degrees of criminal, and how much bloodlust they have towards people they encounter while on the run. And then Darth Destructor says, and then they put out the fables and myths about them and demonize in all media forms, and the gothic people who love these monsters, the conspiracy theorists who believe they're real, and the government covers it up. So, no.
Again, it's a totally way different pitch than we pitched. The only thing I like about that is the idea, you get back to the idea of society sort of persecuting and creating the monsters, which was very much the original Universal Monsters canon. So just that idea that there's sort of an Illuminati group that is hounding them and sort of forcing them into the shadows, and that's where the myths and fables come from. It's not terrible. It's not the most fresh thing I've ever heard, but there's something to it.
Yeah, I have a thing where if you start saying, "Oh, just it's all conspiracy theories are actually real," I just don't support it. I won't put anything like that in art anymore. I don't want this. That shit is too dangerous now, and I don't approve of it. So, that's just me.
Well said.
And we got Ultimate Kyobi Fox knocking it out. I think this is going to be the last. Oh, wait, there's one more. Hold on. But this is Ultimate Kyobi Fox. This is a great one. Sigourney Weaver as Mrs. Frankenstein as a female Quint type. I think she could be awesome. And then Bill responded, "Woo, that's a suggestion."
Yeah, I think we originally said Vanessa Redgrave in that role, who, by the way, would also kill it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, getting Sigourney Weaver in this movie in essentially like the aged Sarah Connor role would be dope.
100%.
Yeah, I think she'd do a great job.
And then we'll end on I Am Solomon, reference to some Bible stuff, I think. I'm starting to feel sequels shouldn't be discussed until you receive reboot, or maybe achieve reboot. I don't know, receive reboot. And you come back to the idea later for reboot, sequels edition, or something in that nature.
To which I've got a response. Can you throw that back up there?
Yeah.
It's always an organic process. Sometimes it makes sense that we plot a multi-film story, and sometimes it makes sense to focus on one movie. We've definitely come to learn that the bigger in scope we go, the harder the conversations become. That said, we're not going to limit ourselves in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, people have mentioned this to us before. There's been some people who said, "Hey, you guys should do a sequel it or something along those lines, where we take our originals and then make sequels to our reboots," which is interesting, but I don't think we're going to do it.
The snake is really eating its own tail at that point. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. Well, that's officially Billy throws around fan fiction like that's not exactly what we're doing, but I do agree that is like ultra fan fiction. Like, you know what I mean? That's like ultra. You're committed now to your own series of events, across, like we're not gonna we're not gonna sequelize our DC movies. I don't think.
No, I don't. That hasn't been discussed. I also think, like, look, I don't think we're gonna ever, in any circumstance, sit here and be like that previous commenter who's like, well, if you're not happy with 7, here's movie 8 for you. Just because that's not a real discussion. Like, you're not actually talking characters and plot at that point. And we're really interested in talking characters, plot, theme, tone. Like that's sort of what we talk about every single episode. That said, if we need to talk about that in the course of like a season of television, a couple movies, one movie, a single episode of television, it's really down to the individual discussion, which I think is the better way to do it, rather than trying to shoehorn us into like, all right, now every time we sit down and we're like, all right, let's make this a trilogy. Like, we never get around to talking about episode 2 and 3 anyway. So, we know our limits. We just like to poke around the edges.
I think the Skywalker saga and the Lord of the Rings is the only ones where we actually pulled off multiple things. But even in doing that, we were just telling one big, long, whole story. I would argue, like, so. Yeah, we don't generally do that. And I think that it would be weird. Like, we are to get away from, what is the kayfabe thing? What kayfabe? Like, obviously, we're people coming up with ideas about rebooting. We're not actually rebooting. And
don't
so
tell people that. What are you doing?
Oh, wait.
What's going on here?
Shit, crap. So it feels like would be the ultimate reiterator at that point, almost. Be like, we're gonna reiterate the theme we already talked about in a sequel. Let's do it now.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I don't know why you got bit by a radioactive Arnold Schwarzenegger before this performance, but
I don't know why
I think last things last. I do believe that in this, again, to reiterate my point from the very beginning, we made this a framework for stories, and I think it's very telling that so many people can come up with so many stories based on the framework that we made up. Obviously, that other artists made up to make these characters, but the particular framework we were trying to put these guys in as monsters that people had encountered, that part unites them in a mythology and sets up a framework for us to have stories. At the end of this movie, I think only the FBI agent is probably alive. I definitely, if I had my druthers, if we're going to try to not complete the movie, I'm not trying to start a whole reboot right now, but like just as a form of closure for the episode, which we never provided, I would tend to think that the half-man Frankenstein woman ends up dead, I think, because she has to pay for her original sin in this. I don't know. I don't think the Wolfman's dead at the end of it. I don't think the Black Lagoon guy's dead. I think we maybe get introduced in the post-credit scene to the concept of Dracula. The mummy is not in the first one, or you know what I mean? There's a lot of dangling things, but it's all suggested that it would take us a minute to get to the mummy. It would take us a minute to uncover the secret past of Dracula and how it relates to the Frankenstein monster. In the first movie, it's basically the Frankenstein monster and how Frankenstein's monster and the fallout of that impact a group. And then we move it to the other monsters, taking precedence in next movies and stuff. So I think the group is basically dead by the end of that adventure. And the FBI agent is like, I survived a horrific thing and maybe beat up or killed a monster and found out a whole bunch of other monster crap. And now I'm down this path and I'm the only one who knows that it even exists. So I must walk it. And in the next movie, she like maybe meets up some new homies that are going to get killed.
She Mad Maxes it through the Monsterverse.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of the trajectory that we were headed on. Do you guys agree?
I think so. I mean, my love of tragic endings automatically makes me feel like the FBI agent should die because she's the main character. But in so doing, she makes some heroic sacrifice to save somebody else from the group. And then that lone survivor, who's sort of been, your B protagonist through the whole movie, becomes the one to carry you. If the support group in this movie, if it starts out very loose, it's like a loose confederation of we all almost died and we want to figure this out, but we don't know what we're doing. The FBI agent comes in to sort of give structure and direction to that group, but then having fulfilled that mentor role, she dies. And like the least capable member of the group is the one who survives, who can then go on to have a real heroic arc in, 1, 2, maybe even 3 subsequent movies.
Yeah,
I like that.
But
we just sequeled it, guys. We just did it.
Oh yeah, but I'd say though, for my dollar, I say the FBI lady survives because the one thing that's interesting to me about the theme of her being able to live, like I said, I guess I'm a hope person. I never knew that about myself until we started doing these reboots, but I do think that she would earn the right and the burden of having to be the hero now. She was an FBI agent who does her job, and then she gets mixed up in something so big that it like fries her brain. And then she gets involved in something else so big that it fries her brain, but she like rises to the occasion and defeats it. And now she's the only person in the whole world who basically knows it exists, or the only person she knows about. And she's got some breadcrumbs to follow into a second movie. I just think that's hot. And I think it's a reboot. It's a tiny bit of a rebooted drinking game at this point for us to kill protagonists and have young ones take over. We did it with Buffy. We do it a lot. It's a trick that we pull a lot. And it's a great trick. It's like Michael Jordan's turnaround jumper. It's a beautiful trick. It always works, but it is a move. It's a move that we do. And I would just love for us to have a move start where we kind of have the hero be dope enough to survive and be the hero of a franchise. They couldn't do it with Tom Cruise, for Christ's sake. I think we did it in this. I think we gave these people a hero that could follow through sequels.
I think that's a bad idea. I do. I actually agree with Bill on this, and I'm going to say why. It's because because these are also movies that are scary, and competent people can get through scary things much better than non-competent people. So if we see the most competent person in this film not be able to survive, and the least competent does pull off surviving by whatever luck, whether that be the competent person actually saving her at the last minute or whatever, then every subsequent movie that this next person survives in is made that much more scary because they don't really know what they're doing. I don't know.
Well, that's the part
that's the
part that I hate, though. That's the part that I hate. Lucky ducks continue to be lucky forever, or this born again hard situation. This 2-week boot camp, and all of a sudden I can defeat everything that Mad Max was fighting for 25 years out on his own. I don't buy it.
I'm not saying
I literally don't buy it. I'm saying though, in all of these movies where you hand down, that's not going to be an argument. I'm just saying, in all these movies where somebody has hard earned a set of skills, right? Just because you find Batman's utility belt at the end of a movie doesn't make you Batman in the next movie. That doesn't make any sense.
That's also
why would, and in real life, the most competent people survive. In real life, the most competent people survive. And I think
absolutely that is not true.
You and a fireman in a fire. You and a fireman are both in a fire. Who survives? Who knows how to survive? You or them?
Probably me, because he would save me. And then he might die in the process because his job is saving people in fire. That's what I'm saying.
I agree with that. But then in the next movie, if you are a freaking fireman, I'm not buying a ticket to that movie because you didn't go through the training. That's all I'm saying. But you're also
making this an action movie. Like,
that's
is this
not
a scary
true.
movie?
That's not true.
It's a horror movie. So it's not scary once
Laurie from Halloween is the protagonist of that series, and they're still as scary as they ever were. To me, I'm a grown-ass man. I'm not scared of Halloween. So in the subsequent movies, to see Laurie Strode have to fight this monster that keeps coming back, I don't know. I'm going to use,
I see where you're coming from, but I got to say, I'm going to use Terminator as an example. In Sarah Connor, look, I'm not saying it's bad that she, turns into a badass, but it's not scary. It is not scary anymore when she's a badass. I just think she's going to handle the situation. Whereas in the first one, I did not know if anybody was going to survive that at all. It was actually kind of scary. I think that you take once the skills are there, and if you're trying suspense, you now have a superhero who already survived insane things, and them surviving the next thing is just the thing they're going to do. But I understand where you're coming from.
I didn't say they were going to make it all the way out of the second movie, but I agree to disagree.
Fair enough.
I'll just throw in here's a third rail solution. The FBI agent can survive if she has to give up something important along the way. And what I think of is Naomi Watts in The Ring, where she and her son survive that movie, but the only way they do it is by becoming sort of a disease vector for the video. She's like, I'm never going to let this thing get my son, so I'm going to copy this tape and send it out everywhere, so the little horror girl is going to kill all these other people. So she sort of becomes the monster within her fervor to protect her son. I think we could give our FBI agent a similar arc, right? Like, she survives, she takes her skill set into the next movies, but maybe she has to redeem herself or set right something that she did out of expedience or, self-interest in this movie. That could be interesting.
Okay. Yeah, or a boulder she pushed in the first movie smashes her in the second movie as she's trying to make amends and stuff. Yeah, I can see that. Well, see, there you go. Rebooted storytelling, you jerks. But yeah, dude, but I love when we use these episodes as we round this out to just add a little flourish to what we did, and especially in one as amorphous as this episode. So I'm really happy with this reboot, and I'm really happy with the episode.
Yeah. Me as well. And thank you guys, as always, for listening to our Reboot Rewinds and becoming part of and supporting this community that we built here. You guys are great. If you want this sweet merch, point it out, Bill.
Hey-o.
Oh, yeah. Reboot it. You know what? I think we need to go solo on this one. Bam. If you want that sweet, sweet t-shirt and some of the other ones and to be as handsome as Producer Bill. Sorry, that's not going to happen. But you can just go to tpublic.com/user/reboot/-it, and you can pick up one of the many t-shirts we have and support us. And it's down there in the links. Tick into the links.
It's in the links. It's on our it's on our homepage. Anything associated with us, just click where there's letters. You'll find us. You'll find
as always,
the merch.
So for Producer Bill, Ed Greer, and our long lost Ash's butt and Billy, I just want to say thank you for supporting this community, and we'll talk to you next time.